Hello, good afternoon everyone. Today our moderator of the session will be Dr. Ida Chandan sir, who is the consultant nephrologist of QV Hospital. Over to you, sir. Please start our session.
Unmute that. Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the technical lapse. Malnutrition and protein energy wasting is a common problem in patients with chronic kidney disease and especially in hemodialysis patients. It leads to increased morbidity, mortality, increased risk of infections, and reduces the quality of life. Now we have Mrs. Iptita Chakravarti. She is a registered dietitian and who is the HOD of dietetics at Calcutta Medical Research Institute, Kolkata. She has completed her diploma in dietetics and MBA in hospital administration. She is working in this field for more than 20 years. She has worked at reputed hospitals like Woodlands Medical Center, Oakheart Hospitals, and is the chief dietitian in Fortis Hospital and Kidney Institute. He has also headed the quality department. He has been the General Secretary of Indian Dietetic Association from 2011 to 2018. He is present holding the National Treasurer post. She has been in the scientific committee of different conferences. She has published various articles in Bengali, Hindi, and English newspapers and magazines and e-papers. She has also provided inputs for various research works. She also delivers lectures on a regular basis. Now over to Mrs. Iptita Chakravarti to enlighten us in this important topic of role of nutrition in improving the nutritional status and clinical outcome in hemodialysis patients. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. At the outset, I would like to thank QV Hospital and IDA Chennai chapter for inviting me in this prestigious international webinar. Thanks to Meenakshi, thanks to Mr. Krishnamurthy, and of course Swaha, who was my intern at one point of time. I'm really happy to see you doing so well. So, and already I've been introduced. Thank you for the kind introduction. And the topic of mine is role of nutrition in improving nutritional status and clinical outcome in hemodialysis patient. So during our college days when we were studying, we have studied a lot about our kidney uretary system. So on the left hand side of the screen, there's the kidney and ureter and bladder, the main uretary system. And on the right hand side, the right hand is the normal kidney and left hand side, that is the kidney which is damaged due to diabetic nephropathy. I have given the picture of diabetic nephropathy because that is the most damaging disease these days pan-universe. Kidney function, I think we all know. I'm touching upon few things because I directly don't land up in dialysis and its nutritional factors. So main function, removal of uremic waste, metabolic end products like removal of urea and creatinine. We in this medical field, we in this dietetic profession, we all know that urea and creatinine, these are the two major blood parameters which you need to check when a patient is having, when a person is having kidney functions, abnormal kidney functions, we need to check these two. Another calcium balance and vitamin D, activation of vitamin D, which helps in bone structure. Erythropoietin synthesis, which helps in blood formation. So in our day-to-day practice, you must have seen people coming with lots of ideas like I'm having this juice, I'm having this green leafy vegetable, because all red vegetable and fruit juices because my hemoglobin level will go up. But as we all know, being a risk patient, that because of erythropoietin, our hemoglobin is low always when a person is suffering from kidney ailments. So there's no point in having some green leafy vegetable juices or fruit juices or something of that sort for this elevation. If doctor feels so, they give erythropoietin injections for elevating hemoglobin level. Fluid balance, another important function of kidney, checks in sodium removal and with water balance, maintenance of blood pressure, regulation of blood pH. Another function of kidney, potassium balance. By doing so, it helps in cardiac activity. So these are the major functions of kidney. When our kidney is not functioning well, we have different stages of glomerular filtration rate, GFR, what we normally check to see the functions of stages of kidney malfunctioning. Stage 5, basically we grade it into 5 stages. If it's normal function, the GFR is 130 milliliters per minute. 90 ml, stage 2, mild decrease in function. Stage 3, moderate and severe decrease, 60 ml per minute. And around 30 ml, it's ESRD or end-stage renal disease. And stage 5, it's either 50 ml. In few cases, I have seen there's no output at all. So these are the screening of CKD risk factors. Normally, what are the things? Hypertension, diabetes, and obesity. CKD risk factor reduction, we need to control our BP, diabetes, and we have to keep our weight under, which should be a normal weight. We should look into that. Treating complications of CKD, uremia, manage anemia, prevent malnutrition. Prepare to undergo replacement where uremia, manage BP and fluid volume, control diabetes, control mineral imbalances, prevent and treat malnutrition. When it reaches stage 5, then dialysis or kidney transplantation, either of the two are the only solution. This is a progressive disease. We don't have a reversal of it. This ESRD percentage of, I've mentioned this, you can see on the left-hand side is the disease due to which we are having this CKD issues like diabetes, hypertension, glomerulonephritis, interstitial disease, cystic or hereditary or congenital problems or neoplasmic tumor. So most of the, if you go by percent, 40.3% population are kidneys are damaged due to diabetes mellitus. Protein energy malnutrition. This is a major problem for our CKD patient. Muscle or fat wasting, weight loss, inadequate nutrient intake, and inadequate protein intake. We practicing dietitians, all the time we face that somebody says that my neighbor said so, my relative said so, my senior said so. So first and foremost, what they do, they just stop checking important things. What we need to do, we need to consult our dietitian, I should say a qualified dietitian, so that they should be guided properly, so that what exactly to be taken, what exactly to be avoided. Don't take any decision on your own, so that you ultimately land up in malnutrition, and which ultimately leads to lots of more and more complication, and which leads to cachexia. These are the metabolic picture of renal disease. Accumulation of metabolic waste products like urea, uric acid, and elevated creatinine. Decreased excretion of urea leads to uremia, metabolic acidosis, hyperlipidemia, hypertension, glucose intolerance, catabolism, increased levels of catabolic hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, anorexia or undernutrition, negative balance of nitrogen and energy, electrolyte derangements like sodium, potassium, calcium, phosphate. These are the blood needs to be checked on a regular basis for a person with renal disease. Anemia due to failed erythropoietin release, which I have already shared. And ultimately, with all these, malnutrition comes in picture. Uremia is a very old term, but these are the symptoms describe renal failure basically. fluid and electrolyte problems, endocrine and metabolic problems, GI problems. Skin itching is a very major issue, neuromuscular disturbances, hematological, immunological problems. Uremic toxins, I have already shared, urea, creatinine, uric acid, amines, peptides, and derivatives of aromatic amino acids. Azotemia, you must have like few things. I'm just going to the basics, like retention of nitrogenous waste products as renal insufficiency develops, implies more advanced stages of progressive renal insufficiency when complex multi-organ derangements clinically manifest. Causes of malnutrition. Deuterichmic syndrome, malaise, weakness, nausea, vomiting. Because of elevated urea and creatinine level, people can't eat anything, can't eat well, and they lose eating, like whatever they used to like, they don't feel like eating anything. Muscle cramps, itching, metallic taste, neurologic impairment. And combining all these, patients are hospitalized with comorbidities like diabetes, infections, amputation, cancer, and inflammation is also there. And because of the comorbidities, if it's an ICU stay, all parameters go up and patient become very, very, very sick. And all ICU patients are basically suffer from malnutrition, any sort of malnutrition they have. Then renal osteodystrophy. This is a major problem for all renal problem CKD patients. Progression with progression of CKD and decreasing GRF less than 25 ml per minute. Serum phosphate level goes up and serum calcium level goes down, thus increasing the parathyroid hormone, developing secondary hyperparathyroidism, which leads to renal osteodystrophy, osteitis fibrosis, and osteomalacia. This may lead to blood vessel calcification and increased rate of mortality. So what should be our therapeutic aims? We need to correct serum phosphate level and serum calcium level. Reduction of phosphate intake by binding, phosphate binder should be used. These are the things which I'll be discussing in my slides. And serum calcium has to be increased. This is the cycle for protein energy wasting in CKD. What are the points leads to PEW? Comorbidities, anorexia, decreased nutrient intake, nutrient insufficiency, energy expenditure, insulin resistance, growth hormone resistance, low testosterone levels, metabolic acidosis, inflammation, oxidative stress. So there comes the data which we need for our nutritional assessment. So before giving a diet chart, before assessing a patient, maybe in your PD patient, maybe in your clinics, maybe in an ICU setup, maybe in an OAT setup, we need to check few things before giving diet charts to a patient. Height, weight status, frame size, arm anthropometric, appearance, and amputations. Because amputations, normally for diabetic patients, it happens. Weight status evaluation. These are the basic terms which we normally use. I'm not going elaborately, like standard body weight, body mass index, ideal body weight, adjusted body weight, usual body weight. These are the terms which we normally use while evaluating a patient. So estimation of frame size. For CKD patient, we use two different ways. Wrist circumference, use a measuring tape to measure the circumference of the right wrist just beyond the wrist bone towards the hand. If the right wrist is swollen or enlarged for any other reason, then use the left wrist. At the end of the slide, you can see the formula. Frame size is height in centimeter divided by wrist circumference in centimeter. So male, middle column is frame size, small, medium, large. For male, it's more than 10.5. For female, it's greater than 11. For medium frame size, is 9.6 to 10.5 for male, and for female, 10.1 to 11. For male, it's less than 9.6, or for female, it's less than 10.1 is the large structure, large frame size. Next, also another way of estimating height using forearm. It's a little busy slide. I don't know whether you are able to see it clearly. I'm just sharing the thing. measured between the elbow and the midpoint of the prominent bone of the wrist. Height in centimeter can be determined. You can see the ulna, which is the ulna. Ulna length in centimeter. In two rows you have seen, it's written, starts with 32 and ends with 18.5. So on top of that, male less than 65 years and male more than 65 years. Female less than 65, female more than 65. So in both the cases, ulnar lengths are little. So accordingly, you can estimate the height of the patient. It may also you may also find patients bedline. So you cannot have that way to measure the patient. Patient cannot stand up. Measuring tape with a measuring tape on the bed may not be possible. So this way you can also get an idea of the patient. A normal proportioned adults, you can get an idea, estimation of height. So from that height, you can calculate the ideal body weight. Accordingly, we can calculate the energy protein requirement. We can proceed. Oh, sorry. Weight changes. This is a major issue in CKD patients. Intentional versus unintentional weight loss. Dry weight changes versus fluid shifts. Clinically significant weight loss. If it's 5% or more within 1 month, 7.5% or more within 3 months, 10% or more within 6 months. These are the, we need to clinically assess or take history from the patient, or if patient is not in a position to share the information, you can collect the information from the patient relative, because we need to know the weight loss status. Then only we can find and evaluate the patient for clinically assess and nutritional assessment. And we can, normally we use lots of SGA. In many of the hospitals we use, even in my hospital we use SGA. So by that we can come to a conclusion how to go about it, how to clinically assess the patient, and medical nutrition therapy to be started with that particular patient. And attitude towards the changes and goals for weight changes. These are the things we need for the evaluation of the patient. Interdialytic weight gain. This is a very major thing for a patient who is undergoing dialysis. Patients are normally twice a week, 4 days a week. Patients are on dialysis depending on the situation and condition of the patient, how many times a week a patient is undergoing dialysis. General recommendation is plus 2 kgs. More than 5% of fluid gains, that we may come to a conclusion that patient has taken on excessive fluid during that interdialytic phase. And weight gain, less than 2% fluid gain, inadequate fluid or less fluid intake, and weight loss or decreased body mass. So if it's 5% fluid gain or less than 2% fluid gain, weight gain basically, so we can assess excessive fluid is being taken or weight gain has been done. But weight gain from just taking a weight by a weighing machine, we cannot decide whether that particular weight is due to edema or muscle gain. So DEXA is a gold standard, but every time DEXA cannot be done. So another simple method is done in my hospital. My previous hospital, we had been using it. BCM, body composition monitor. There data comes out. So there you can see body mass, fluid mass, everything you can, even your muscle mass, everything you can from a single sheet data, you can find out the exact position of the patient. Diet history, which is very important. Appetite or intake, food preferences, allergies or intolerance, taste changes, acute or chronic GI concerns, swallowing or chewing concerns. And at the same time, urine output, pica, religious or cultural restrictions, supplement intake. Few patients are there who are on homeopathic treatments, nutrition knowledge, not homeopathic, any other medical management. So diet history. This is also a major problem, because it may also happen that patient is staying alone. So whether he or she can shop properly, cook properly, somebody else is there to cook for her, some household errand person is there who is helping his or her in her daily activities. So these are the few small things, but as a dietitian, we need to look into all those things so that we can plan our diet search, plan our meal prep, that particular person's meal plan accordingly. So abilities, facilities for medications, whether there's any side effect or compliance, physical limitations, whether that particular patient is bed bound or just little mobile or bed to chair, totally ambulatory, totally working, going to office and coming back. So we need to know the physical activity or limitations of the patient. Psychosocial problems like emotional support, economic limitations, because dialysis is a very, like if it's a continuous, as it's a continuous process and the medical management is too many medicines they need to have. So economic burden it's a major economic burden on that particular person. We need to understand the financial condition of the patient before prescribing something to that patient, and whether because of the disease patient is in depression or not. So treatment compliance, whether it's there or not. Doctor may prescribe twice a week dialysis. Patient may not reach out to a dialysis center. So that also happened. I met a few patients who sometimes miss out on dialysis. They didn't feel like he or she stays alone, didn't turn up. So ultimately land up in overload of fluid and respiratory distress, land up in ICU. Nephrotoxicity. This also leads to kidney damage. In many cases, nephrotoxicity is reversible. So AKI happens. So few dialysis one patient may require, and after that, patient may become absolutely fine and lead a normal, healthy life. Pain medication is really harmful for kidneys, and would like to request don't buy anything over the counter. Alcohol, antibiotics, prescription laxatives, contrast dye used in some diagnostic procedural tests like MRI. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not a technician, I'm not supposed to say all this, but in few cases, contrast, when creatinine is elevated, contrast is not used. And illegal drug abuse is also one of the causes of damage of kidney. These are the normal blood parameters which we need to look into while analyzing a patient. Sodium on the left hand side, that is the test to be done at the normal value. Sodium, it should be within 135 to 145. Potassium is 3.5 to 5.5 milliequivalent. Blood urea nitrogen 7 to 23 mg per dl. Creatinine 0.6 to 1.5 mg per dl. Albumin 3.5 to 5. Calcium 8.5 to 10.2 mg per dl. Phosphorus 2.5 to 4.8 mg per dl. Aluminium 0 to 10. Magnesium 1.45 to 2.4 mg per dl. Ferritin for male 20 to 350, for female 6 to 350. Carbon dioxide 22 to 25 milliequivalent. Glucose 65 to 114. Parathyroid 10 to 65. Along with this, I would like to suggest for a diabetic patient, one must maintain their HbA1c target. If it is less than 7, nothing like it. So you must check your HbA1c at least once in 3 months. And glucose, if you are on insulin, you must check your do your finger prick and check your blood glucose on a regular interval. This is a patient medical history. Basically, this is done by Kalantar. They are two very eminent physicians who are famous for basically renal. They are famous for renal part of their thing. Patients is a busy slide. I don't know whether you can see it clear or not. Patient-related medical history. This is very crisp and clear. weight change, dietary intake, GI symptoms, medical capacity, comorbidity, physical examination, decreased fat store or loss of subcutaneous fat, signs of muscle wasting. These few questions are there, and according to the question, as per question, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Some points are there. So malnutrition scoring can be done. If you sum up all the score, then you come to our conclusion. What is the scoring? So according to the score, we can assess the patient and we can start our MNT. KDOQI guidelines for dialysis patient. I'm dealing with dialysis today, but I have written peritoneal dialysis requirements also. Protein, it should be more than 50% of high biological value. Hemodialysis, it should be 1.2 to 1.3 gram per kg body weight per day. For peritoneal, 1.2 to 1.3, it should go up to 1.5. Energy, basically it's 35 kilocalorie for less than 60 years, 30 to 35 for more than 60. Same for PD also, but it is usually person specific. It is usually person specific. Phosphorus 10 to 12 milligram per gram protein or 800 to 1000 mg per day. It can be adjusted to meet protein needs. Both cases, it's the same. Potassium 2 to 3 gram, but we need to monitor the serum potassium level. And for PD, it's little higher, 3 to 4. Fluid, its output plus 1 liter, but we need to limit our intradialytic weight gain. We have to maintain our fluid balance for PD. Sodium 2 gram or 2 to 3 gram, a fluid balance has to be maintained. Calcium less than 2 gram, including binder load. Both cases it is same, but the serum calcium level has to be within normal limits. Vitamins and minerals I have shared in the next slide. Fiber, it should be the same, 20 to 25 grams from fibrous vegetables or fruit sources. These are the vitamins: C, vitamin B6, folate, B12, E, zinc, iron, vitamin D, B1. Others as per RDA. These are the things for specialized for renal patients. 60 to 100 grams, milligrams for both HD and PD. B6 also same. Folate, vitamin B12, E. You can see it's almost the same. Vitamin B1 for HD is little less, 1.1 to 1.2, and for PD 1.5 to 2, because during with PD losses are more. So that's why requirement is little high in few cases. While making the diet chart, these are the few things we need to look into. Diet should be attractive and palatable. The fluid balance should be controlled so that we can control our edema, and serum electrolyte levels should be maintained. Nutritional deficiency should be looked into. Renal osteodystrophy should be looked into, and CVD complications we need to look into. Before making diet charts, we need to look into all the comorbidities. So it has to be a robust dietary assessment. We need to talk to the patient very well. If he or she is not in a state to share so many things, we need to talk to the caregiver. Albumin, it's a controversial key element. Basically, depressed values of PEM, fluid overload, chronic liver or pancreatic disease, steatorrhea, inflammatory GI disease, infection, catabolism, the artery surgery, abnormalities in protein metabolism, acidosis, and for elevated values like dehydration, high dietary protein intake. For HD, 10 to 12 gram free amino acids are lost. Losses increase with glucose-free dialysate. For PD, 5 to 15 gram protein lost as albumin. Just because of that, PD requires a good amount of protein to be taken. Protein, 1.2 to 1.3 gram protein per kg for standard body weight. Average patient, if it's 80 grams of protein, so 50% should come from high biological value. High biological value proteins all are first class protein. Basically, poultry, fish, turkey, eggs, cottage cheese, soy. 6 to 10 ounces daily. Protein alternatives like protein bars, protein powders, or supplement drinks. But I would suggest supplement drinks, we need to look into the fluid intake of that particular patient. So I normally, like in many cases, per day fluid intake is 500 ml, 700 ml. India is a very humid country, so require water for thirst, for having medication, along with diet. 800 ml is nothing for 24 hours. Even few patients are fond of tea. So without tea, they cannot survive. So at least very small half a cup of tea that has to be given at least twice a day. So we need to counsel the patient. I tell my patient, you use some supplement with your water, like 200 ml of water, you add some supplement into that water. So while having medication, you have that. So your supplement goes in along with your medication, because for supplement, you cannot have it separately because another amount of fluid goes in. So within a very small amount of fluid permitted for a patient, I normally recommend supplementations for dialysis patients like that. Potassium, which is a very important blood parameter, we need to look into, and the dietary advice should be given accordingly, 2 to 3 grams per day, but patient cannot understand what is 2 to 3 grams because they cannot calculate how much comes from what, this thing. So leaching, you can just soaking, but through leaching, 100% potassium doesn't go out, hardly 40 to 50% goes out. So leaching is one of the major thing you can try. Stricter diet restriction when it is elevated, insulin deficiency, metabolic acidosis, beta blocker or aldosterone antagonistic treatments, hypercatabolic state. For non-diet causes, hypokalemia, for hemolysis, high glucose, insulin deficiency, inadequate dialysis, incorrect dialysis, potassium concentration, starvation, catabolism, sickle cell anemia, Addison disease, long-term constipation. These are the few causes which are non-dietary causes but can cause hyperkalemia. So fruits and vegetables, like these are the ranges. Low is 20 to 150, medium is 150 to 250, high is 250 to 550 mg. But we cannot write it to the patient like this because patient don't know what is the content of potassium of which particular food items. Portion size is very essential. In few cases, it's written, it's a marketing strategy, low sodium salt. Or you can find some product, sodium substitute. But that doesn't mean that low sodium means that particular type of salt can be used by a CKD patient, because that can be potassium salt, which will cause more harm to you. So have salt, normal salt, within a stipulated quantity what we prescribe or your doctor prescribes. Portion size is essential. What I said, avoid salt substitutes. High phosphorus foods to be avoided. Most of the cases, phosphorus I will discuss later because in my next few slides I have that. Avoid highest concentration of potassium like oranges or juices, banana, potatoes, plantains, mango, melon, avocado, tomatoes and nuts. These are to be avoided. Phosphorus dietary intake should be around 800 to 1000 mg per day, less than 17 milligram per kg standard body weight. HD removes 500 to 1 gram per treatment. PD removes 400 mg per treatment. So 50% dietary phosphorus removed by binders. So binders plus diet plus dialysis, we can keep a good control on phosphorus. So these are the few generic name of phosphate binders. We normally don't prescribe that. So this is for general awareness. We don't prescribe. So this is the on the right hand column, it's the estimated binding capacity of the phosphate binders. So calcium acetate, sevelamer, hydrochloride, calcium carbonate, lanthanum carbonate, and the estimated binding capacity is 30 mg, 64 mg, 20 to 24 mg, and 320 mg. Phosphorus balance. Phosphorus intake is plus 1000 mg per day. Absorption around 60%, binding around 50%, and dialysis removal, if it's 700 into 3 times a day, so 2100 mg per week. So weekly phosphorus balance, how can we calculate? If it's 4200 per diet minus 2100 through through binders, this is through hemodialysis, so 4200 and 2100 it gives rise to 4200, so automatically it's balanced. High phosphorus food. High phosphorus foods are dairy products, beans, nuts, processed meats, chocolates, pancakes, waffles, biscuits, cakes, sardines, whole wheat, grain cereals. Low phosphorus like fresh meat products, homemade baked goods, non-dairy creamer, kimchi, white flour products, rice products, these are low in phosphorus content. Phosphorus additives. Inorganic phosphorus absorbed easily. Phosphorus binders ineffective with many of these additives. So these days we use lots of packaged foods. So before buying that, these are the few phosphates we need to go through the level, so that we need to know whether these are there in the product. So we need to be very particular before buying a packaged food. Phosphoric acid, sodium hexametaphosphate, calcium phosphate, disodium phosphate, trisodium phosphate, monosodium phosphate, disodium tripolyphosphate, tetrasodium pyrophosphate, potassium tripolyphosphate. These are the few things I could mention. Next comes calcium. Use corrected calcium for albumin less than 4. Calculation is 4 minus albumin into 0.8 plus the calcium value. Diet less than 2 grams per day. It's hypercalcemia. It's calcium-based binders or supplements, vitamin D analogs or treatment. Diet of fortified foods, dialysate calcium levels. Hypocalcemia, vitamin D or calcigex, supplement between meals. Vitamin D is activated in kidney to calcitriol or vitamin D3. The D3 level falls with kidney failure, calcium absorption goes down, phosphorus excretion goes down. As I shared earlier, PTH increases and bone disease develops. Vitamin B3 therapy helps prevent renal bone disease. Calcium and phosphorus precipitate and calcify soft tissues. Fluid intake is very, very important for a dialysis patient. For any CKD patient, maybe not on dialysis, maybe on hemodialysis or peritoneal dialysis. For adequate urine output, normal fluid intake. For inadequate urine output plus 500 ml. So previously I have shared 1 liter. It entirely depends on the particular patient, the edema condition. So depending on that, the fluid is advised to that particular patient. Take a 500 ml water bottle, so fill it in and drink from this bottle or tap your liquid intake accordingly. Or discard the liquid consumed from the measured, like you had half a cup of tea. If you take that particular volume of water from that 500 ml, so while boiling, fluid evaporates. So it is better you make a tea, measure that volume and discard that volume of water. The amount of tea you had consumed, you measure that and discard from your 24 hours measurement. I instruct my patients accordingly. Again, I am saying limit interdialytic weight gain 2.2 to 5% estimated dry weight. More than 1 liter, it's a sodium. More than 1 liter fluid output, 2 to 3 grams sodium and 2 liter fluid. Less than 1 liter fluid output, it's 2 grams sodium and 1 to 1.5 liter fluid. And giving a general guidelines, it doesn't mean that it is applicable for each and every patient. It has to be customized because diet chart and diet restrictions and dietary modification is absolutely individualized. These are basic guidelines to be followed. Accordingly, we can make permutation combination depending on the condition of the patient. If it's anuria, 2 grams sodium and 1 liter fluid. Again, I'm saying it's individualized. Interdialytic weight gain, blood pressure, residual renal function, increased restriction if interdialytic weight gain is increased, congestive heart failure, edema, and hypertension is there. So everything is individualized. This is nutritional facts. Food level is the most important thing which you must check while buying a particular product. Few hidden factors are there which we normally skip. So we need to read. It's a simple slide taken from a picture taken from Google. So I'm not saying this is a standard nutritional fact. So whatever you buy, you please check the nutritional fact label on that particular product. Lipids, very important. Increased risk of lipid disorders. Recommended fat intake should be less than 30% of the total calorie. Saturated fat should be less than 10%. Cholesterol should be less than 300 mg per day. Omega-3 supplements for elevated TG. Optimum fiber intake, as I already shared, 20 to 25 grams per day. This is a fiber slide. Renal multivitamin containing water-soluble vitamins. Dialysable is take after dialysis. Vitamin C in renal vitamin. Limit total vitamin C. Already I have shared 60 to 100 mg. If vitamin C is elevated, so automatically oxalate is increased. So calcification of soft tissues and kidney stones. So these are to be individualized. For iron, vitamin D, calcium and zinc, these are individualized for our dialysis patient. For nutritional supplements, oral supplements, modular proteins, cookies, protein bars, meal replacement versus snacks. Meal replacement, like few products are available. So you can use that as meal replacement, but those are to be stirred in fluid. So it is difficult for a dialysis patient to have a meal replacement with a supplement. So it is better for a snacking, either a midterm snack or an evening snack. Evaluate potassium or phosphorus. Don't buy any product, over-the-counter product. But while choosing, prescribing a nutritional supplement to dialysis patient, please consider the product with electrolytes, and that particular product should be renal friendly. For again, continuing with the enteral products, barriers of compliance, fluids, palatability, cost. For tube feeding, we should go in for renal formula. Barriers are acceptance. Still now, patients come up with, can't we have some homemade things? So they all have a preconceived idea, which we qualified dietitians, we are solely responsible to make them understand that homogeneous and kitchen feed and blenderized feed are not the correct feed to be given, because more than 50% of the nutrient are lost while straining and making the product. And there is a compliance, like even what sort of water you are using, handling, manpower usage, who is using, tube clogging. Lots and lots of issues are there for homogeneous products, these blenderized products. So when a tube-fed patient is there, it is advisable to give renal specific formula so as to get exactly what we are prescribing and that particular patient are getting, because renal formula are calorie dense. So within a very low amount of fluid, we can give a good amount of calorie. For dialysis patient, we can give a good amount of protein as well. For IDPN, it is not done in many units. It's intradialytic parenteral nutrition. So this is like no supplementation can be avoided. This can be done during, this is done during dialysis. So usually requires a documentation for malabsorption because a person who cannot be fed through tube. So they are advised for that. For dialysis clinics, they have their individual rules and criteria. So this is very individualized, and doctors normally take care of this intradialytic parenteral nutrition. At least in my unit and in my case, I don't do this, and I don't look into this intradialytic parenteral nutrition. So thank you so much. So if any question or anything from your end.
Thank you, Mrs. Chitra. Thank you for the enlightening talk. We have many questions, but due to lack of time, we will restrict to few questions. Mrs. Rashi, her question is how to prevent hyperphosphatemia in hemodialysis patients.
I have already shared that the phosphate comes from non-veg items. So while prescribing the diet, it's who we, the dietitians, need to look into what we are prescribing. So we need to calculate the phosphate. Accordingly, we need to prescribe the food items what we are prescribing. And phosphate binders are always there. So depending on the serum phosphate levels, we phosphate binders are also advised.
Yeah, thank you, madam. Second question, Mrs. Vanisha Nambiar. Her question is, what are the nutritional requirements for a child undergoing dialysis? I suppose it is hemodialysis.
Basically, we are dealing with adults today. Anyways, basically, we need to look into a child's protein intake very well because that's a growing phase. So for our dialysis patient, we need to check the particular food intake. Children are very fussy. So protein has to be a good quality protein and high biological value protein. It has to be given. We need to look into the calorie intake, and we need a good amount of carbs as well. So depending, and sometimes children are very fussy. They miss out few food items. Most of the food items which are we dietitian go on saying, no, you are not supposed to have this. So during dialysis or just prior to dialysis, please let them have those items so that during dialysis that is being flushed out, so that patients feel happy and they look forward that the dialysis day I am little relaxed and I can have those items on during my dialysis day, and they can be fed well. So need to look into the growth factor, the weight, and accordingly we need to, age-wise, we need to prescribe our protein.
Thank you, madam. Now, Mrs. Chitra and our chef Satish will speak about culinary renal recipes. Over to Chitra and Chef Satish.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chitra, dietitian working at Curie Hospital. Today, my topic is about culinary renal recipes. We only make our patients, and the session will be handled by myself and Chef Satish. Culinary renal recipes are prepared painstakingly by our chefs with dietary input and a tailor-made menu provided by our qualified dietitians. Each meal has carefully controlled levels of protein, potassium, chlorine, and sodium, and other important nutrients provided in the right portion size. Now, we can move into some of the recipes with their ingredients, preparation, and nutrients. And our first recipe is coded with sugar bananas.
Our first step is Koda millet jeera pepper rice. The ingredients are very used. Koda millet 50 gram, cumin seeds 5 gram, black pepper 5 grams, oil 1 teaspoon, salt a pinch. The preparation is soak Koda millet 5 to 10 minutes. Add the 1 teaspoon of oil in the fry pan. Add the cumin seeds and black pepper. Saute for 2 seconds. Add the filtered millet. Add the 150 ml water. Add next pinch of salt. Mix well. Close the lid and let it boil for 10 minutes. Switch off the flame. Serve the hot Koda millet jeera pepper rice.
Can you hear me? Are we audible? Can you please put it in the chat so we will be able to know?
Okay, you use a salt alternate, rosemary or celery, raw mango, or alternative millet, little millet, or rice flakes or raw rice. We can use this millets also.
Okay. Now coming to the benefits of Koda millet jeera pepper rice, that is this low protein recipe, how it benefits in renal patients. It is suitable for pre-dialysis CKD patients as it is low in protein, phosphorus, potassium and sodium. And as chef said, you can use basil gram, rosemary, celery, raw mango for salt alternatives. Not much quantity, very less quantity can be used for the replacement of salt base. And as you can see, the values of phosphorus, sodium and potassium is very low compared to other nutrients also. So you can use these recipes for low protein diet. Okay. Now coming to the second recipe, snake gourd saute.
Snake gourd saute. The ingredients used are snake gourd 100 grams, carrot 20 grams, capsicum 25 grams, onion 10 grams, black pepper powder 5 grams, oil half teaspoon, salt a pinch of. And the preparation is cut off the snake gourd slice, boil it up, keep it side. Add the one up. Take one fry pan, add half teaspoon oil, add onion, saute few seconds, add and carrot, capsicum, saute for few seconds. Added after boil snake gourd, added pinch salt. Finally, added crushed pepper, saute few seconds. Serve with snake gourd and saute.
Salt alternative.
Salt alternative we have used rosemary, celery, garlic, and vegetable alternative chow, parua, rich stock, and tinda also. We can use this alternative vegetables.
Okay, coming to the benefits, similar to the Koda millet jeera pepper rice, the benefits of snake gourd saute is also having low protein, potassium, and sodium and phosphorus. And as chef said, ginger, garlic, raw mango can be used very little amount just to replace. And for vegetable alternatives for snake gourd can be used as chow or choco, parvar, rich gourd, and tinda. Why we choose these vegetables? It's because these vegetables are very low in phosphorus, sodium, and potassium compared to other vegetables. And why this particular, for vegetarians, these sort of vegetables can be used compared to non-vegetarians. Now coming to the third recipe, vermicelli chicken pulao.
Our third recipe is vermicelli chicken pulao. The ingredients used are vermicelli 25 grams, chicken 25 grams, carrot 10 grams, garlic 10 grams, capsicum 10 grams, onion 10 grams, oil 1 teaspoon, salt a pinch. And preparation is boiled chicken and keep it side. take a fry pan, add the 1 teaspoon oil and garlic, onion, saute few seconds, and add the capsicum, carrot, saute well, and add the 70 gram water, 70 ml water. When you get water boiling point, add the vermicelli mixed to well. Next, add a pinch of salt. When you vermicelli get the vermicelli, it's half boiled. Add the boiled chicken to it. Close it, and let it boil vermicelli 5 to 7 minutes. Switch off the flames. Serve the yummy vermicelli with chicken pulao. Salt alternative, you are using rosemary, celery, and oreganos, garlic also. Non-veg alternative, we are using egg, freshwater fish like catfish, small prawns. We can use.
Okay, now coming to the benefits. The vermicelli chicken pulao is suitable for dialysis patients as it is high in protein, low phosphorus, potassium. Salt alternatives can be used as herbs like oregano, celery can be used. And for non-veg alternatives, eggs, freshwater fishes like catfish and small prawns can be used. These sort of fishes and prawns, that is shellfish, having a low phosphorus, potassium, and sodium, you can have at least 25 grams of these ingredients for the recipes. And now coming to the fourth recipe, Asian paneer stir fry.
Fourth recipe is Asian paneer stir fry. The ingredients used are paneer 25 gram, capsicum 10 gram, onion 10 gram, tomato 10 gram, black pepper powder 5 grams, oil half teaspoon, salt a pinch. Yeah, and preparation is cut all the vegetable slice and paneer cut the cube. Take a fry pan, add the half spoon oil, chop garlic and saute few seconds. Add the onion, capsicum, saute few seconds. Add next paneer cut the cube. Add saute few seconds and add the tomato also. Saute few seconds. Finally add a pinch of salt and crushed pepper powder. Saute few seconds. Served with the delicious Asian paneer stir fry. We are using salt alternative, basic rosemary, celery. Vegetable alternative use soya bean and tofu paneer.
Okay, how does Asian paneer stir fry benefits for renal patients? Again, it is similar to the vermicelli chicken stir fry. It is also suitable for ongoing dialysis patients as it is having high protein, low potassium, phosphorus, and sodium. And vegetarian alternatives can be used as soya bean. If many people are also, and for these recipes are mainly prepared for one meal, so for one serving. And this Asian paneer stir fry contains nutritive value like calorie 131 kilocalories, carbohydrate 8.9 gram, protein 6.1 gram, fat 6 gram, and phosphorus, sodium, potassium 111.6 mg, 48.2 mg, 207 mg respectively. And a patient care initiative by Curie Hospital, that is renal diet at your doorstep. Now, we are particular that our care does not end with assessment and preparation. It has to also satisfy patients' taste buds. Diet restrictions need not necessarily mean taste restrictions, which is the core principle behind this initiative. For an elderly couple living alone or in a busy household where everyone is a working professional, preparing a separate diet, especially for renal disease, can be a time-consuming ordeal and a source of added stress. Curie Renal Diet provides a meal for renal patients that is affordable, healthy, and tasty. Thank you. If you're having any queries, you can ask us. We can clear it.
So we received few questions. First question is,
What is the quantity of prawn? Kindly Satish Chef attend this question.
You take 25 gram prawns.
So I think you get your answer. As per our chef told, he used 25 grams of prawns. And as per we got many comments that there are. So our chef now will show some dishes, what we prepared and what we explained. As per you can understand more.
They will be the first recipe, udon millet jeera pepper rice. The one meal. Second one, snake or sausage. The third one, vermicelli chicken pulao, high protein. Fourth one, Asian stir fry, high protein. Asian stir fry paneer.
So our chef already showed your 4 dishes. And if you want to know more and you need the recipes, we will surely share with you all the PPTs also. And if you have any query, you can right now also you can ask. So I want to at first thank Chef Satish and Chitra for giving nice explanation for all the renal dishes and recipes. So as being a dietitian, I think we all know how much we need a chef for preparing the tailor-made dishes. So thank you, Satish Chef. Thanks a lot for your big effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So now we came at the end of the session of our 3 days webinar. So without thanking few people, we can't end of the program. Good evening everybody at first. I thank IDA, Indian Diabetic Association Chennai chapter for joining hands with Curie to organize the international webinar on critical care and renal nutrition. I would like to specially thank Ms. Meenakshi Bajaj, Mr. Krishnamurthy Pri for taking the initiative forward in short time of span. I want to thank Ms. Reshma Ali for her guidance in organizing the webinar series. My sincere thanks to Dr. Sriram Krishnan for his constant support and inspiration. On behalf of Dietetics Department of UD Hospital, I would like to thank all of the speakers, moderators for accepting the invitation and supporting us immediately. The speakers, Dr. Sriram Krishnan, Ms. Chitta Mahesh, Ms. Meenakshi Bajaj, Dr. P. Nasi, Ms. Ikshita Sarapati, share their expertise on this field. I am truly honored as I have been their student of all of our guests, and today I am very proud that they all are speaker of this conference who are organized by us. As a student, I learned about nutrition and dietetics from them. Today, I learned the organization from them. Thank you so much. I take this opportunity to thank Mrs. Gayatri Krishnan, Managing Director, UD Hospital. Her constant guidance and guidance has motivated us all the successful contact events. As I also like to thank our QD team, Dr. Renu Kashina, Clinical Director, Dr. Abbas Udvasanandini, our clinical consultant microbiologist, Dr. Ida Chandan Sir, consultant nephrologist, for their very initial inputs. I want to thank Chitra, our dietitian, Chef Satish, Mrs. Sama, our IT team, Mr. Dhanashri and Mr. Karthik for supporting the 3 days webinar series. My heartfelt thanks to my team, Mr. Anand and Mr. Rishikesh for being our partner for hosting the program. Finally, I would like to thank our wonderful audience across the globe who have shown their enthusiasm for participation in the program and make it successful. The response we received as feedback clearly states that the program is very useful. Thank you for making it possible. So we got many questions that will get certificate or not if they attend this session through YouTube. Yes, you will get also a certificate if you attend through YouTube because we are keeping the attendance from YouTube also. And after that also you have any other queries, any doubts, just you have our mail IDs also because we send all mails from our IDs. Just one message will surely reply you. And thank you so much for being with us. We all full QD team, my ID team, I'm really grateful to all of you. Thank you.